Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to go over chapter 8, which is about security information systems. So what do we mean by information security? So we mean about information security is that it is everything that helps us protect information. So in few words, security refers to the protection of information. So we have a long definition of it. It includes policies, procedures, technical measures used to prevent unauthorized access. So in other words, to protect. And the same thing for controls. First, methods, policies, organizational procedures that help ensure safeguard organization assets, right? So systems are vulnerable because of the accessibility of networks. So now through the internet, which is the largest network of networks, when we have access to a network, then a hacker can do some malicious actions, such as hacking, installing malware, launching attacks, and so on, right? And then another vulnerability is the hardware problems. So some of the hardware might be damaged due to maybe water comes to it or falls, or there are some just timing or because of crimes. And then software problems also, it can be programming errors, installation, and then disasters, which include hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, wars, and so on, that might make our systems vulnerable. And then the use of networks outside of firm's control, loss and theft of portable devices, all those make our systems vulnerable. So there are some areas where vulnerability can come from. So from the client's user, there might be a vulnerability of unauthorized access by hackers, right? Or other employees within the organization. There are some errors. And then we have sniffing or eavesdropping, tapping that is between the client and the corporate servers. And all of those hacking malware, we'll talk about them actually today in the next slides. Internet vulnerability, again, the internet is the largest network of networks that makes our businesses vulnerable because of this major size and being open to everyone. And then also emails, instant messaging, peer-to-peer, those can open backdoor to hackers where they can control or have access to information in businesses. And then attachments also that might have malicious software. Bluetooth and Wi-Fi networks also, they are susceptible to hacking. And we have service set identifiers. Those are the access points that we can see that transmit signals about the availability of Wi-Fi. So some might actually utilize those access points, especially sniffers, where they can intercept that data traveling back and forth through those service set identifiers or access points. And then word driving. So this is where individuals can come to near a house or near business, and then they identify using the service set identifiers if they can access the Wi-Fi or the network of that organization or that company while they are driving their cars. And then if they have access to that network, then they can do damage to that those computers that they have access to. Either they delete files, corrupt files, or spread viruses and worms just to crumple to cripple the information systems, right? And this is an example of a sniffer or intruder in the middle that have access to data traveling back and forth from the service set ID and the legitimate user. So malicious software. So we hear a lot about malware. So malware is a short for malicious software, which includes viruses, worms, Trojan horses, spyware, and so on, right? So viruses refer to malicious program or software that spreads very fast, and usually it is attached to another software, right? And then we have worms also. The worms, they copy themselves very quickly, and they might actually clog the network or the memory of your machine and make it very slow, and might show some pop-up messages that are not likable, might not are not desirable. So and then it clogs basically your computer and it becomes super slow. You might have experienced that. So again, those worms and viruses can be spread either through downloads. So if you get an attachment through email or instant messaging, and you click on that attachment, you might have worms and viruses and will be installed in your computer, and then your computer will be infected. Or it can be through a jump drive that has a file that you want to get it from a friend or so, and then try to open it to your computer, then you get infected with these worms and viruses. Then mobile device malware. So this is malicious software where a hacker gets access to your mobile device and he converts your mobile device to a robot or a bot, as they say, where they can use it as part of a botnet, where they can attack or actually send emails, send messages from your mobile device to others. And then social network malware. This is, again, malicious software where the attacker or the hacker can send inappropriate messages from your social network account to others, or post inappropriate images on your social network and post it to others. So I will let you watch this video here that explains the viruses and malware. And then we have different, again, malicious software includes Trojan horse. This is a benign software that seems at first to be benign and not harmful. It can come as in the form of a nice picture, or it can be a software that you download for free, like the XBot, which is used for geometry, I believe. You might think it is useful, but it has abilities like the keylogger, where it records your keystrokes and to steal your passwords and credit card information or your banking information. And then we have the SQL injection attacks. Those are some companies, websites or databases, they are not secured enough, where in the username, when they are asking for your username or password or your name, they can include a SQL statement like this: select username and password from user table, right? Where user ID equals 105, for example, or empty, or 1 equals 1, because this part is always true. And we said about or, if either one is true, then we will get the output. So it will give us a list of the users' names and passwords for everybody in that database, right? So this is what we call it, SQL injection attack. And then we have ransomware. This is a malicious software that can be downloaded, through a link or attachment. And what it does, it encrypts all the files in the machine, and then creates a key, so no one can open those files, or when you want to get control of those files again, unless you get that key. And in order to get the key, the hackers will require you to pay ransom money, right? You need a certain amount, and that amount has to be paid through Bitcoin, right? And then they might give you access to it. They might not, because you can't guarantee. But again, this is one way of attacking or malicious software. And then we have spyware. They can be used for marketing, for advertising, where they can spy about your uh, browser use, but also it can be used for spying um, to get personal information about you, like keyloggers. So that's a software where you can, hacker actually can be able to record your keystrokes, usernames, passwords, banking information, and so on. And I will show you, actually, there's a video. I'll show you how keylogger works. And I will let you watch it in a little bit. So this is the video. I will let you watch it at your own time. It explains to you how the hacker can have access or control of your computer, right, through a vulnerability. In this case, it was Adobe Read. It has a vulnerability or a weakness in it where a hacker can have a backdoor access to your system, and they can control your system, right, from their home computer. And it shows you also how they can take pictures of you through your webcam while you are sitting, and they can find out what you type, username, password, and so on. But I will let you watch it. And this is the ransomware video. I'll let you also watch it. So hackers versus crackers. So hackers refers to those individuals who can have unauthorized access to a computer system, right? And a cracker is a hacker who has bad intention. They do it for bad intention, because a hacker can be a good hacker, meaning that they are trying to hack a system because someone forgot their password, or they are trying to find vulnerabilities in a business so they can help them fix it, or for auditing purposes. And then we have activities that hackers do include system intrusion, system damage, cyber vandalism. So cyber vandalism, which includes intentional disruption, destruction of websites, corporate information systems. And then we have spoofing and sniffing. So what do we mean by spoofing? Spoofing is when a hacker pretends to be someone else other than who they are. So they try to be a legitimate person. So they send you an email asking you to update your username and password for the university or for your banking information, while they want to steal information from you, right? So they pretend to be someone else, or they send you links that are deceiving. So click on it. It looks like it is a university link, but it takes you to a different website that they want you to be in. And then sniffing, this is interception, or or you can think about it as a man in the middle. They can intercept data coming, or traffic data coming from and to you, to a network. So denial of service attack, distributed denial of service attack, botnets, they're all related, because denial of service attack, this is when a system, like let's say a web server or a website receives several requests at the same time. Remember the Obamacare website, 2012 or 2014 or so. Around that time, when the Obamacare website was published, it received millions of requests. So a lot of people tried to get into that website. So in other words, it received a lot of requests to the point that the web server crashed, and it was not working for a couple of days, right? So denial of service attack is similar to that, but it has a bad intention. So the hackers, they send thousands of requests, if not millions of requests, at the same time, to the point that it cripples that web server or network, right? So distributed, usually they use distributed, meaning that thousands of computers from all over the world that they have control of sends that request at the same time to crash that web server or network. Usually they use botnet. Botnets, those are basically those thousands of computers they have already hacked, and they have backdoor access to them, and they can control them when they need them. So in other words, some computers that might be actually controlled by a hacker, while the individual, they don't know, they are using theirs as normal, but the hackers, they have backdoor access to their computer, and they use it to launch such attacks or requests as part of a botnet, right? And then the spam, those are the spam emails. We receive emails that, they are trying to sell you some products that you are not interested in, like Viagra or something, or you receive emails that are trying to sell you, or actually some of them, they might be bad. They have links where they want you to click on them so they can install viruses and worms on your computer. Again, computers can be a target of crime, and they can be instrument of crime. Identity theft. So this is when an individual tries to impersonate you because they know certain information about you, like your username and password, or your credit card, or your social security, and then they can open a banking account or a credit card account on your behalf, or they can file for tax return on your behalf because they have that information about you, right? So phishing is an example of identity theft. So the phishing refers to when you receive a link or an email that pretends to be a legitimate person asking you for sensitive information like your username and password, or, oh, we are Bank of America and we would like you to update your username and password because the system is gonna block your account if you didn't respond immediately. So they try to scare you so you can provide them with that information and steal it and sell it, or steal your money from there, basically. So that's what we call it, phishing. And then there is spear phishing, and I will explain it in a little bit. Spear phishing is when it's customized, it's targeting you personally. They address you with your name, and it comes from some legitimate places that you are familiar with. So for example, here at the university, you receive an email from Blackboard telling you that your username and password are expiring soon. So please, within 2 hours, update it, or today, or so. So they ask you to provide your current password so you can update the new one. But that's what we mean by spear phishing. And an example of that also, we receive emails from the dean sometimes. Somebody pretend to be the dean, thinking that we are going to fall for it, but we always report that. And then evil twins, this is when you go to an airport, or you go to a hotel, and let's say that you have Hilton Hotel or Holiday Inn Express, and then they have a Wi-Fi called Holiday Inn Express, and then somebody else next door, they have the evil twin, they have another Wi-Fi, they call it Holiday Inn Express 1, and then people get confused. They might actually click on that Holiday Inn Express 1, where they can basically do sniffing and basically steal information from you. And then farming, this is where they install a program where you type a legitimate URL like utrgv.edu, but when you but it takes you to another web page. So this is what we mean by farming. They program the browser where you type a legitimate URL, but it takes you to another URL that you are not intending to go to. And then the click fraud, this is where some companies, they have advertising, for example, on YouTube, right? You see that they have advertising. So what they do is they hire individuals from low wages countries to click on those advertising without the intention actually to buy or learn about that product, but they do it so they can weaken the budget or the marketing budget of their competitors. So you get the idea what we mean here by like. And then cyber terrorism and cyber warfare. This is where states, cyber warfare. This is where the states get involved in cyber attacks, right? The Stuxnet, for example, is an example of how countries were involved in crippling some other countries' infrastructure. So, for example, Stuxnet, that's an example that I will show you in the video. And some people claim that the United States and Israel are behind it, and other companies were involved in it, like Siemens, where they crippled the nuclear fusion of Iran's of Iran, and you will see that in the video. So again, cyber warfare, that's state-based cyber attacks. And it's in this video, I'll let you watch it. So again, how can you know if the email that you received is legitimate or it is a phishing email? So one way, or the fastest way, is to hover over the hyperlink, and then you will see the actual link. If it is legitimate, that is coming, for example, here, it is coming from UTRGV or the or the company that they claim to be. And here you can see that's not, it doesn't look like it is a legitimate place, right? And the HTTP, it doesn't have the S, so that means it's not secured. And the other thing is you will notice a lot of grammatical errors in those messages, so which tells that it's not legitimate. So what could happen if you click on a phishing email? So you can actually, basically you may have just instructed your computer to download the malware, viruses, keylogger, when you have been hacked, and denial of service attacks or ransomware, right? So internal threats, employees. So this is the major threat to companies is that they're insider attacks or their employees. So inside knowledge, so some employees that you might have fired, or some employees that might have some revenge intention because you fired them or you did something wrong to them. They might actually use that knowledge to attack and do cyber vandalism or spread viruses and worms in your system. And then sloppy security procedures, and this is user lack of knowledge. So in other words, lack of training is one of the major threats to companies, is user lack of knowledge. And then social engineering, this is where hackers can trick employees and impersonate other employees who are legitimate, but in order to trick their employees to give them information that they should not have access to, right? And I will show you some of the one video about social engineering, about Catch Me If You Can. That's kind of a movie that you might have watched before, where people can impersonate others to go through. Again, this is the movie. I will let you watch it.
40 seconds.
I will let you watch it actually at your own time, but it's a very interesting. What's the actual movie? But this is actually the actual individual. This is the real individual actually of that movie, who did Catch Me If You Can. And then we have software vulnerability. So sometimes companies, they don't have the expertise to develop their own software. So they ask other companies to develop software for them. In other words, those companies who are building that software, they need to deliver on time, within requirement, within budget. So they are in a rush. And then that software consists of thousands of lines. So there might be some ways where they might have some bugs, some defects, and some flows. So again, there are some vulnerabilities because of that. And then we have the zero-day vulnerabilities. This is when a software, where a hacker finds a weakness about the software or a vulnerability about the software before the software company knows about it. So this is what we call it, the zero-day vulnerability. So Adobe Reader had a vulnerability or a weakness where hackers knew about it before Adobe company knew about it. So they used it to run some ransomware attacks and so on. So we call that zero-day vulnerability. And in order to fix those zero-day vulnerabilities, software companies, they need to fix those or to create patches, right? Fixes or patches, and they send those patches to different to the individual systems, and they come as updates. So in other words, you need to update your system regularly when you see that there is a system requires updating, because basically those are patches to fix some of those security vulnerabilities. So what is the business value of security and control? So you need to be, it might cause total loss of business function if you got a breach or your system is down because of that security issue. You don't want to lose trade assets or trade secrets. And as a company, you need to make sure that you don't get exposed to security breaches, which may cut into a firm's market value in the stock market. So the stock market value will go down tremendously. And there is also liability for companies when they are breached, right? Gets in the news, that's reputation, but also liability where a company has to compensate those who are affected by that. So for example, 2013, Target paid more than $39 million to banks who has customers using MasterCard because of a breach that happened to them. So the government tried to come up with its own controls, kind of to, for example, HIPAA here is to control or to manage security and privacy rules, procedures, or to protect patient information. Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, that's kind of to control or to protect financial or personal financial information. And then the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. So that's an act that was enacted as a result of Enron and WorldCom, which are companies that cooked their accounting books. So in other words, they lied about their financial statements, and as a result, this law was there so to ensure that the accuracy and integrity of information, financial information of companies. Again, electronic evidence and computer forensics might be needed in a lawsuit by the court, right? And then another term that we need to keep in mind is the ambient data. So ambient data is when data is deleted from a desktop or a hard disk or hard drive. Actually, it can be recovered. So those controls can be automated or manual. So automated, for example, you have password, then username and password as protection, but how can you protect manually? So one example of a manual protection or control is to have locked doors for storage rooms that has servers, right? Make sure that they are stored and then they are locked down, right? No one has access to them to damage them or play with them. So then we have general rules, which include software controls, hardware controls, and so on. And we have application controls. So application controls includes input controls. So that's when You make sure that the data is accurate and complete when you enter that data. Also, when you edit that data or error handling data. And then in processing controls, that's where you ensure that the data is accurate and complete when updating that data. And then output controls refers to making sure the results are accurate and complete. So again, controls that you can do is audit and audit and audit, right? Perform scheduled and ad hoc testing and compliance, undercover boss. You as a CEO or as an employee try to test the system yourself and see. You might have seen this undercover boss show, but that helped a lot, kind of, to identify vulnerabilities. And if there is a weakness, then you can train employees on it. Bring inside and outside examiners as auditing, as part of auditing, and then training, onboarding. As soon as you hire someone, you train them on security, what to do, what not to do, and then refresh that training maybe every year. That's what we do here at UTRGV. If a government regulation, so again, we do risk assessment. So we assess what are the types of threats, and then what is the probability of occurrence of that threat, and what is the maximum cost and the minimum cost of that as a result of that threat. And then we can calculate the expected annual loss. So this is an example. And as I said, in the example, in the quiz, I might ask a question. So for example, here we have 3 types of threats. We have power failure, embezzlement, and user error. And then also we have the probability of occurrence of each of the threats. And then we have the range, loss range. So we have the maximum for power failure is 200,000, and the minimum loss can be 5,000. So the average will be 5,000 plus 200 divided by 2 will give us this number. So again, in order to calculate the expected annual loss, we need to multiply the probability of occurrence times the average loss, right? And then it will give us this number. Now we have the expected annual loss. This will enable us to rank the priority for investment. Which one should we invest if we have limited resources? Let's say that we have only 40,000, right? Which ones should we, or let's say we have only 31,000. Which one should we invest in? Of course, you're gonna invest in this one because the expected annual loss is a lot, right? Those ones, if we didn't, at least we can handle that loss, right? And this is again risk assessment matrix. So when should we invest in security is when the expected loss is medium and the probability of risk is medium. Is high, right? So here in this box, so we take preemptive action to prevent the risk, or we take action or we invest if the expected loss is medium and the probability of the risk is high, or if the expected loss and the probability of occurrence is very high, again, in that box, or if the expected loss is high and the probability of occurrence is medium. Again, right? In these boxes, we don't have to, just considering our budget. And this is an example. So this is the sweet spot. So we will invest when we reach these levels. So security policy. So after we do the risk assessment, and then we can rank the risks and identify the goals that we want to follow. And then we can come up with an acceptable use policy. What is acceptable to do in information systems, or which one is not? For example, are we allowed to use TikTok? So it's not an acceptable use policy, at least in the state of Texas government devices. Is it allowed to use it to buy a ticket from your work computer? It depends on the employer. And it should be, I mean, it depends on what they think, but to encourage work-life balance, there should be a possibility as long as they are not, for example, abusing the system or playing video games on your employer, on their employer computer, for example. And then identity management, so identify who has access to what, who can read, who can modify, update, or delete. And this is an example of access rules for a personnel system. So in the blue one, this is a clerk. So the clerk has access to all fields in Division 1 and all employees' data for Division 1 only. They can read and update everything except for those three: medical history data, salary, pensionable earnings, right? So they can read, meaning they can see, they can create a report, and they can update, they can enter data, right? But for a manager, they can actually read only. That means they can create a report, but they can modify, delete, or enter data, right? They can only view, and they view everything, including medical history. There is no restriction. Disaster recovery planning. So disaster recovery planning, what we mean here by that is that if a disaster happened, like a flood, a tornado, on fire, or any war, how can we recover from that disaster? So we need to have backups. Always we need to have backups. And you will watch a video later on about how Pixar movie was, or toys actually, how it was recovered as a result of a backup that they happen to have. So you have to have backups. So a lot of companies, including UTRGV, we have backups in different locations just in case of a natural disaster or so. So, for example, the book mentions that MasterCard, headquartered in St. Louis, in Missouri, they have a data center backup in Kansas City, just in case something happens in St. Louis, they can run their business and recover using the data that is in Kansas City. And then we have business continuity planning. So if something happened, a disaster happened, and we can't actually, I give an example of HEB, and let's say the credit card is not working, system is not working in the store. So are we going to close the business and say, no, everybody goes home? No, we should have a business continuity plan. You can maybe accept cash, so people can just bring cash, and or use the paper-based credit charging, right? Where people fill out a form and then you can charge them later, right? You got the idea. So then, again, both types of plans need to identify from most critical systems. And then we have auditing. So how can we know if our security and controls are effective? So we need to do auditing. Again, we need to audit the system, run some simulated disasters, to test the responses and see how we are going to do. And provide training. So this is an example of an auditing report. So identify the weaknesses or the threats. So for example, here, one of the threats identified is user accounts with missing passwords. So there are some user accounts without passwords. So in other words, if you have that username, you don't have to insert a password, and you can get into the system. And then they provide the justification why it is a threat, because it leaves the system open to unauthorized outsiders or attackers. And then they inform the management, and they see what the management responds to this. So the management agreed to eliminate accounts without passwords. So you got the idea what we mean here by audit. You identify the threat, why it is a threat, and what the management can do about it. Identity management software, keep track of users, what privileges, who can do what, and also keep records of audit trail. right? We call it. It tells us who modified a certain record at what time with what username and what was the change and so on. And then we have authentication, which includes password systems, right? So the most common password is password, right? Or 1234. And then we have tokens, which are small devices that can fit into a keychain that has password changing continuously. And then we have smart cards, which is like a credit card, the size of a credit card or student ID that you can use. And biometric authentication, that's when you use fingerprints, facial recognition, or the eye, or the iris for authentication. And then two-factor authentication. This is where you have two factors of authentication. For example, when you are withdrawing money from a bank, you need to insert your debit card. So that's one factor of authentication. Second authentication is to insert your PIN number. So the second factor is your PIN number.
So yeah, I tried to install it myself, but you guys have these things so password protected.
That just means you have to enter your password. What's your password, Michael? Oh, it's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
So you got the idea. So you don't want to be Michael Scott. So you need to, when you think about your passwords, make sure that it is 12 to 15 characters, not complexity, right? Think about length, keep it weird, right? Don't punch up your special characters, never double dip, don't use the same password for them for your bank and for your university, just in case some got breached, then they figure it out and use it for other accounts, and change once a year and so on. So this is a nice website. I will let you click on it, and I want you to try different words, different passwords here, and see which one is strongest. So for example, this is the website, and then let's say I enter a website password. So let's say I include the password here as UTRGV. So it can be UTRGV 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes 42 minutes for a hacker to crack it, right? Or UTRGV 1, 2, 3, 4, Edinburgh, 200 million years. So you got the idea. So this one, this website kind of shows how strong your password can be. But don't enter your actual, never enter any of your current passwords into that software, into that website, right? This is just kind of an example of testing the strength of passwords. So why our passwords are in such demand? Because data is hackers' currency. So for example, an email account can be sold for up to $20. Email addresses, bank account credentials can be sold for up to $850 in the dark web. Credit card information can be sold up to $30 per credit card information. So you got the idea. And then also the website access are up for sale. So as you can see here, some of the websites, University of South Carolina, before full site admin control is up for sale for $88. So you get the idea. And then official Italian government website that is up for $99. So full site admin. So you got the idea why hackers try to they make money out of those. And then technologies that can safeguard information systems include firewall. So firewall is consists of hardware and software, right? It uses the packet filtering technology, where it reads the titles and the headers and looks at the packets that or the traffic that comes back and forth into the network. And then the stateful inspection, this is where it looks if there is an ongoing communication between your computer and the outside. So it happened to me when I sent my tax return information to my accountant from my university account, email account. It was blocked at first because it has social security number, but later on when the system recognized that I have this ongoing communication, now it doesn't block it. So that we call that stateful inspection. And then network address translation, or NAT. This is where it conceals the IP address of the computer, so that way sniffers can't intrude. And then application proxy filtering. Those are all ways firewall uses or approaches firewall uses to block any attacks. And this is a video explains how firewall work. Gain tools and technologies for safeguarding information systems, so intrusion detection systems. They look at actually those systems, they monitor and they see if anyone was trying to get into the system with bad passwords. So they tried several passwords, then that's kind of an alarm. Somebody is trying to get into your account, right, by trying to guess the password. And then, or they can see if there is a movement of important files, then that's kind of a detection. There is some intrusion, right? Anti-malware and anti-spyware software. This is like Microsoft Defender or McAfee. So make sure that you are always updating your software, and unified threat management systems. Those are a system that has all of the above. They have intrusion detection system, malware, VPN. So they use several measures, firewall, and so on. In order, all of them are all in one, in order to protect your information systems. And then we have securing wireless networks. So the WEP, which stands for Wired Equivalent Privacy. It used to be static, meaning that it doesn't change, but then with WPA 2 and 3, they are more continuously changing, and they are longer encryption, so they are more stronger encryption. So what do we mean by encryption is transforming text or data into ciphertext that cannot be read by unintended recipients. So in other words, they need to be they cannot be read while they are in transfer, right? So there are two methods for encryption on networks. So if it is transferring data from a computer to a computer, you have secure socket layer and successor transport layer security. Those are methods for transferring data between computers. And then secure hypertext transfer protocols. That's when you transfer data through the internet. Two methods of encryption. We have the symmetric key encryption. This is when the key for encryption is the same for the recipient and for the sender. And then we have the public key encryption, where we use the public key and a private key. So when the sender sends an encrypted message, the sender uses the receiver's public key, and then the receiver also uses his or her private key in order to decrypt that message that they just received. And again, here we have digital certificate. So uses trusted third-party certification authority in order to credit companies, actually credit card companies use this a lot. So they use this third-party certification authority for transactions. That way it becomes faster to buy items through credit cards. Look, blockchain. So we already talked about this in previous lectures. Again, fault-tolerant computer systems, so ensuring system availability. So fault-tolerant computer systems is very important. So this is where we contain, the systems contain redundant hardware, redundant software, and redundant power supply components. So hardware, you have multiple disks. So whatever you save in terms of data, it can be saved in multiple disks. So if one disk went bad, then we can use the other disk, or we can use backups through the cloud in different locations. Then the same thing for software, and then power supply. Also, you will notice that major hospitals and also the university has power generators as backups, just in case the major the general electric power grid is down. Then we can run that power generator to run our essential components of computer systems, right? And then security outsourcing. So this is when a company is lacking the expertise inside, they don't have employees who are expert in security, then they have to outsource that security services. So again, a single weak link in terms of database or network might cause actually outage to the company. So we want to make sure that everything is backed up and we have plans for resiliency. Again, security cloud in the cloud can be a possibility when you use the cloud for backups. Also is a possibility, but the responsibility of security resides with the company owning the data. So you need to keep that in mind as a company, and also as a company who is using cloud services from a vendor, you need to specify in the service level agreement, which is the contract between you as a user, a company that is using the cloud computing services, and the cloud computing vendor. So you need to specify where your data is going to be stored. They need to tell you, they need to meet corporate requirements, legal privacy laws, segregation of data. You don't want your data to be saved with somebody else's data. And audits, the vendor needs to be open for audits and security certifications. So I'll let you watch this video, which is about the movie Malicious, the Toy Story, I believe that's the movie, and how the data was lost and recovered. So again, I will let you go through those and make sure that you back up. Always back up, use cloud services. So I will stop here and I will see you next time.